Hey, I'm Maaria Tiensivu. I'm the Nomad coach, and I'm here in Tenerife in the sun, enjoying my digital nomad lifestyle. I used to work in service innovation and consulting, and quite recently I swapped over from coaching teams in innovation to also coaching individuals, and mostly I coach nomads and wanderers, people who kind of live in other places than what their passport would be issued from. What I do mostly is I work with quite like holistic things with my clients. So it can be everything from values and beliefs all the way to structuring your life as an entrepreneur globally, and we get into all kinds of different questions and solutions and behaviors that we need to change and check for the people to be able to live the kind of lives they want, especially as digital nomads. I've seen a big rise in the remote work community. Last year I actually lived in London for a bit, and I was one of the few people who did work remotely quite a lot. I think it's something that, even when you work with people, it's something that if you facilitate it well and you moderate it, you kind of mindfully plan your days and you plan the interactions with people, I think almost any kind of job can be done remotely. It just requires a different kind of planning, facilitation from the kind of typical 9-to-5 office day work. No, definitely not. I myself am very analog, as everyone who ever has worked in the same place as me. I come with Post-its, I come with notebooks, I have books. It's not very great in terms of luggage, but no, there's definitely all kinds of nomads, and remote work can be whatever you kind of make it. As long as you have a laptop or you can take your work wherever you want to, you have a phone, should be fine. Yeah. The most difficult part in my current way of working is definitely kind of international tax, trying to figure out, because I'm an entrepreneur, how it works when you're not in the country where your company is at, and kind of figuring out the practicalities of staying in one place, your clients being all over, you legally being somewhere, and just making sure that it's all aligned with the legal aspects of how it should be. But yeah, I think that's probably one of the trickiest bits. But once you get that sorted, it's also quite easy to manage afterwards. I don't think I've stayed still for over a year without moving. Oh, I did once over the past 15 years. I stayed in one place for 2 years. So I would say that remote work kind of chose me. At some point I just realized that the way I'm living right now, the jobs I had where I had to have an office, I had to stay somewhere, it just really didn't kind of facilitate the life I had. So that's when I had to figure out. I think one of the core things you need to figure out is, why do you want to work remotely? Because if you don't know why you want it, you can't really structure your work accordingly. There are a lot of practical things that are a bit more difficult when you work remotely. It's not all kind of glamour on Instagram. You're quite isolated. You need to figure out what works for you. So for example, if you're the type of person who needs other people to be productive, you need to figure out how you're going to get that as a remote worker. Are you going to go to a co-working place? Are you going to work in cafes? It's just kind of figuring out the practicalities and asking yourself, why do I want to do this? So that you can build the kind of life you want and get the kind of remote lifestyle that you're looking for. Yeah, I think that would be very, very interesting. However, I can see kind of additional or modified support needed for that. Because when you're kind of trying to learn the ropes of the content of what you're doing, as well as working independently or remotely, there needs to be additional kind of levels of communication, making sure that someone's supervising you, and also just making sure that you get the support you need to be able to learn the job in the way that you need to. But yeah, I think definitely, because it's gonna be the way we all work soon, so would make sense. I use Slack a lot, mostly because I stay in co-living places and co-working spaces, and those communities are usually run by Slack. With my clients, I use Zoom, Skype, WhatsApp. Then I use Google Drive. I used to do a lot of slides. I still think in slides, so I do a lot of slides. But yeah, mostly computer-based, but also just on my phone, just recording notes, etc., sending things to my clients, emailing back and forth. Mostly communication tools though, definitely. I think it's one of the core things that you need when you work remotely is a very kind of clear, mindful sense of yourself and being able to reflect on what you need and what works for you. Because there aren't really, when you're working remotely, there's no one who's going to be kind of telling you what to do. So you need to ask yourself those questions. You need to figure out, how do I work best? Am I being efficient now? Especially if you can work whenever you want and you don't have hours, you're going to have to figure out what works for you. And that just requires kind of like constant reflection and making sure that you're aligned with your needs and the ways in which you work best and the ways in which you can contribute to the life and the work you want. I think in the same way as anyone and everyone needs some kind of management or support, I think remote workers need that as well. I just think it needs to be a very different kind of support, potentially from office workers. So for example, from my point of view, because I work with digital nomads, the kind of practical issues and the kind of identity, culture, all kinds of things, beliefs, living in a place where you don't understand anything. These are different kinds of things to be dealing with without your family, friends, immediate networks. So the support would be very different than with someone who's living in their hometown, has access to things that they understand. You know how to send mail, you can receive things. So yeah, definitely I think there should be support and it should be tailored to the different kinds of remote workers that are in the company or in your team. I think it's something that everyone should probably try. Even if you're completely office-based, just kind of getting a feel for what works for you, especially with different tasks. It's quite an easy thing to start trying out, like what kind of, if you're writing a report, for example, where are you most productive? What's the right time for you to do that? Where do you need to be? When do you actually get something good from the people around you? And when do you actually find it just difficult to work in a group? So it's more about kind of trying to find yourself. And I think it's very easy to do that with a remote lifestyle. And I think it's easy to start doing that even in your own city, and then you can maybe start exploring and going further away and maybe even joining some of the digital nomads that I coach.